Hi, my name's Ty. You're probably wondering why I'm kneeling down on the floor right now, and that'll all become apparent soon enough. Please, don't send me to jail. Yours truly, Ty. Oh, why, hello. I didn't see you there. My name's Ty Gadbury, and today we're here to talk about poetry. A loving subject, one filled with wonder and joy and wonder. As you all know, I'm quite the fan of poetry myself. As much as I love Jane Austen, well, poetry itself is a very vague topic. So to narrow it down, we're going to be talking about one poet, an individual by the name of Mr. Percy Shelley, a man who proves it's best to look on the inside when the outside just doesn't cut it. And today, we're going to talk about his life, his legacy, and if you're a 16 to 18-year-old girl in high school right now, you're gonna love this as much as he loves you. Without further ado, on to the fun! Well, Ty, who's Percy Shelley? Well, I'm glad you asked. For starters, the best place to begin is often the beginning. Percy Shelley was born on August 4th, 1792. He grew up in Brookbridge Heath, along with 7 other siblings. His parents were Elizabeth and Timothy Shelley. His father worked as a squire and in Parliament. In the early days of Shelley's youth, he enjoyed fishing and hunting in the meadows around his house with his cousin and friend Thomas Medwin. Alas, at the young age of 10, Percy was sent off to Lion House Academy, 50 miles from his home in Brookbridge, which at the time, universities were not the only schools deemed as colleges in England. Not long after, he enrolled at Eton College, during which over the span of 1 year, he wrote 2 novels and 2 volumes of poetry. Later, in 1810, Percy Shelley enrolled at the University of Oxford, from which after only a few months, he was expelled. He, along with his friend Thomas Hoggs, had published pamphlets entitled The Necessity of Atheism, as well as some political, which speaking out against God was considered heresy and blasphemy at the time. Of course, his parents demanded he forsake these beliefs. The university tried to force him to acknowledge or deny his authorship of the pamphlets, to which he refused. After being expelled from the university, he married a 16-year-old girl named Harriet Westbrook in August of 1811, which naturally her parents gave no consent to the marriage. Later on in life, he acknowledges that he married her in hopes that it would dissuade him from committing suicide, which, ironically, he grew annoyed of her. In 1813, Shelley had his first child, named Elizabeth, when he was only 21 years old. Now at this point, he was far too annoyed with his wife to stay, so he ran off before his second child was born and met another girl named Mary, the beloved daughter of his poetic mentor, William Goodwin, which again did not approve. Go figure. In fact, he was so infuriated he would not speak to the two of them for another 3 years. So, they fled to Paris with her sister. By the time the two of them returned, Mary was already pregnant with Percy's next child. Of course, once his wife Harriet found out about the pregnancy, she filed for divorce, which at the time, divorce was a much more frowned upon endeavor. Mary gave birth to the child in February of 1815, who, after only a few short weeks, died. A year later, she gave birth to another child named William. Percy must have gone into the future and stole some Barry White tapes or something, because this boy knew how to put the mojo on. After the boy William was born, Harriet committed suicide by drowning herself in the Serpentine River that same year, to which, after only a few short weeks, Percy and Mary were finally wedded. And despite having run away, having a kid, and having his ex-wife commit suicide because of him, her father finally accepted her again. Gee, thanks Dad! However, because of this, Percy lost custody of he and Harriet's daughter, and she was sent away to a foster home. He and his new wife Mary then moved off to Marlow. A few years later, Shelley and Mary were invited to Switzerland by her stepsister Claire. While they were there, Claire had begun dating a man named Lord Byron, which by the end of their visit she had already grown tired of. However, Percy and Byron spent a lot of time boating together, during which time he received the inspiration to write one of his most famous works, A Hymn to Intellectual Beauty. After their stay in Switzerland, Percy and his wife Mary went to Italy, where they moved from city to city. Alas, as if their story was written by George R. R. Martin himself, their son William died in Rome of a fever not too long after, along with her stepsister Claire. Before she even stopped mourning the loss of her son and sister, Percy drowned in a storm July 8th, 1822. Naturally, there was some speculation cast that he was murdered for his religious views or political outcries. However, not long after, his body washed ashore in Viareggio. There, he was cremated, to which his wife didn't even attend. Such is the tragic story of Mr. Percy Shelley. Now, despite what may be considered a controversial lifestyle in most people's views, Percy was responsible for a great number of Gothic works of literature, one of which was the poem Mutability, the quality of being able to change. Just as the clouds, we strive to conceal the darkness burgeoning within and around, but soon we realize the end or efforts are futile and ultimately negligible. Just as an inharmonious chamber plays out without regard to grace or unity, to those who do not cherish such sounds, they soon fade away to nothingness. Thus is the nature of all when forgotten. When we rest, our dreams can plague and distort our ecstatic well-being. When we wake, the constant strife and plight further taint our peace. Being human, our emotions are subject to deviate at any bat of an eye. Though in the end, all of our perceptions are free, as everything is fleeting, for one's past may cast no mold of their future. As such is the mutability of life. So what Shelley's trying to convey in this is everything in nature changes, especially human beings, whether they're ready to or not. Over the poem, he relates to humans as clouds and the sounds of instruments, both of which are either forgotten or fade away. He also relates us to the change of night and day. Essentially, it's how one thing comes and the other leaves, regardless of our consent. We as people try to conceal or fight back against such change, but it's inevitable. Thus, we must endure it. And in the end, the only thing that stays the same is the very fact that the nature of life is change. Throughout the play, he also uses imagery, noting that things in nature constantly change. He mentions that clouds veil the midnight moon, thus streaking the darkness radiantly, and how dreams have the ability to poison sleep. Some personification is that the clouds will speed, gleam, and quiver. And the metaphor of this whole poem is that clouds as well as humans are subject to change because of the environment that they're in the nature of their existence. He also uses a simile of humans being like musical notes. Whether they're remembered now or not, eventually they are forgotten. The irony of the poem is that the only thing that stays the same is the fact that things change. He also questions that if we cannot stop change, why is that the same? Over the course of his work, he proposes many ideas like this and plays on some of the darker elements of human nature. Much of this is possible to relate from his atheism, since he takes on a different view of the world. Without some holy and gracious view upon it, he sees things in a much darker manner. And in reality, the works of his literature are just simply the way that he processes life. And thus, that wraps up Crash Course here this week. My name is Ty Gadberry, and thanks for watching. Whoops. It's good. A brief lesson: do not flip a table if the camera's right in front of it. Yours truly, Mr. Gadberry.